How many people are in the chat now?
1, 2, 3. One half a step too late or too early, you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. On this team, we fight for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch. Because we know that's the difference between winning and losing.
Mean in the Green. It's right here for you.
That's football, guys.
Go Mean Green.
Welcome to the GoMeanGreen.com Barbershop Podcast, dedicated to students, alumni, and fans that truly bleed green.
Don't give them room to breathe.
Follow us on Twitter at GoMeanGreen and visit our website, GoMeanGreen.com.
Love that.
Gotta love it, baby. Here we go.
Now, your hosts of the GoMeanGreen.com Barbershop Podcast, Evan, Harry, and Ashton.
Let's go.
What's up, Go Mean Green fans? We're having to roll forward tonight without the captain of the ship, Evan. But this is JD, joined by
Harry.
This is Ashton.
We're already off to a great start without Evan. Sorry, guys. Hopefully, Evan can join us throughout the process. But we're getting started tonight, kind of like North Texas got started Saturday against Cal.
That's right.
Yeah.
What a tough day.
Hopefully, we finish a little better. But yeah, let's start. Thoughts on the game, guys?
I mean, it was a disaster. It was just terrible. Actually, the weather wasn't as bad. I didn't think it was near as hot as we thought it was going to be. So you had this feeling of, hey, man, things are, trending in the right direction here. I thought the crowd was decent. Wasn't great, because I think the weather scared some people off. The student crowd was a little disappointing, but there were still a lot of students there. I mean, I went into the stadium through the student side, and there was a ton of people in there. The alumni side I thought was pretty darn full. But man, after maybe the first quarter and a half, it just became very clear that we weren't ready to make it happen. And the performances on defense, the tackling, the amount of rushing yards, huge. Yeah. I mean, the rushing yards were just off the charts. I mean, I've not seen a team run the ball like that on us in a long, long time, if ever. And it just turned into an absolute, the wheels just started coming off to where I think at halftime the game was over. Sadly, we were kind of hoping maybe that Chandler Rogers might show us something, when he finally came in to do mop-up duty, and we didn't see it. So as much as I don't want to put one game as defining the Eric Morris regime, and you just can't do that. That's not fair to him or the program. It's just about as bad a start to a season as you could have.
Well, I mean, so, to pick up on your last sentence, it's clearly the worst debut since Dodge. But Dodge at least went up against OU. So, that's OU, and they were really good then. So, okay, that's not, not saying that Eric Morris is Dodge. I hope it's better than that. But, yeah, man, it just, there's a lot of areas. I mean, we could go 9 different directions. I am not bringing out the pitchforks like some people are, I guess. I get it, though. Everybody's pissed, and rightfully so. But, you said the tackling, I just, the dude, Ott's good, right? He's good, He broke 7 tackles on his own, out of the 3,000 missed tackles we had. 113 of his 192 yards came after contact. 113 after contact. That's alarming. Really bad. And it was apparent early that we weren't tackling at all. And I didn't understand that, because it's like you watch football and there's a couple there's one basic element of football: tackle the man with the ball. And we weren't even doing this little. I mean, I know we can go all kinds of different directions, but I just want to go there for a second. Like, that was shocking to me. And then, we couldn't tackle. We also had 0 QB sacks. We had 0 QB hits. I'd like to know when the last time in a college football game, or how common is 0 QB hits in a college football game? Like, it can't be that common. Hits, just 0 QB hits. That was shocking. So I don't know. I mean, we hyped up the quarterbacks, which we'll get into that. We hyped up the running backs. We hyped up a lot of areas, and I think all of us were trying to temper expectations, but getting excited and trying to like temper those within ourselves. But it just goes to show you that we know nothing. When the new coach comes in, new scheme, new everything, we don't know anything. So hyping up Stone Earl, hyping up Rodgers, hyping up anything is foolish, because that's what you get. And to sit there and say that we all said we were going to win, they almost scored 61 points. I mean, that field goal goes in, that's 61. That means you give up 61 points at home. So, I don't know.
So before we dive in too much, I would like to throw out, and I don't think it was talked about. I know we mentioned it, but did we give Coach Blesh enough credit? I mean, we talked about it a lot. I mean, he probably knows the guys on defense's weaknesses more than possibly the current coaching staff, just because he was with those guys. He went, head to head against them day in, day out in practice. Was that something that we didn't value?
I mean, you and I know you and I know I've brought it up to you at least 4 or 5 times. JD, we've talked about that, several times, that was a big advantage to have a guy that was the second in command. He was the number 2 guy under Seth, and he goes to become an offensive line coach at Cal, and he knows that this team and personnel better than anybody.
But it's just tackling, right? It's just tackling. Like that one touchdown, he broke like 13 tackles, didn't he? He literally 13 different times a person was there to tackle him. There's only 11 on the field. And one guy literally hit him twice.
It's tackling, but it's also there were moments like where there was a tight end out there, a running back on the other side of the field where there was no one there. I mean, I get the tackling was atrocious, and I didn't think they wrapped up well at all. But some of that is talent. You know what I mean? Some of that is just athletic talent, making it look like it's, it's technique, but it's also talent. I feel, though, that they had a better game plan. Some of those runs, one was like a 70, 80-yard run. And I don't disagree that tackling was a part of it, but I do agree with JD that they had us scouted. They knew what we had. And I think they had a really strong game plan to run against us.
But you don't call a play running the ball up the middle and break 11 tackles. That's not a scheme. It's just not. You can't convince me that Blesh said, hey, run at all of them, and they're not going to tackle you. That's just kind of silly. We just didn't tackle. And if we make some first half tackles, we don't win the game. It's not 58 points. A couple stops on third down we didn't get that we had them. I mean, we just flat out. I mean, there was a lot of areas that weren't good. What was really alarming to me too is that I love Eric's honesty after the game, but I don't know if I like a coach saying we're farther behind than I thought we were. That was. I mean, I guess we can get into that later on, but that just kind of threw up. To me, well, that's coaching, right? Is to get them ready. So far behind, and you didn't know they were that far behind. I think he would take that sentence back if he could in a second. I think that he was just looking for answers, and he was clearly pissed off because I still know how coaches come in there after a loss like that.
See, I disagree. I disagree. I think the honesty is appreciated by me.
It is.
We've had no honesty around here for a long time. I think the honesty, you're right. Does it expose the fact that we did not have a good handle on this team? Absolutely. But I'd rather be honest about that than have someone say, oh, well, we just had a bad day, or, whatever the other excuses might be. So I think you're right. It is concerning. And I would say you got to look at your second, third, fourth in command. Are you telling me what I want to hear, or are you telling me the truth? You know what I mean? I think that's some soul searching Eric's got to do with the staff. He's ultimately responsible. And so it's his career on the line. But I think that, again, I feel like maybe we took for granted some things and we kind of bought into our own hype. I know personally, like linebacker, Rod Steamshaft one was talking about, we had 2 walk-ons starting at linebacker. He's absolutely right. I knew that was not a good thing going into this game. Now you want to hope for the best, but at the end of the day, that's not a good situation if you're North Texas's defense going into a game against a Power 5 opponent, period.
Yeah, and I'll pop up the depth chart right here because that's something I was wanting to hit on tonight. I mean, the defense was bad. I mean, we gave up 58 points. They gave up, however many yards. There's no really excuses. But then when you really go and start looking at that defensive side of the ball, looking at the depth chart, a thing that really stood out to me that I hadn't paid attention till after the game, obviously, but we actually have more walk-ons on the 2 deep than actual guys that Coach Capone and the staff brought in this offseason. So I mean, not to make excuses, I would say that's, something that you could put on that, may take a little time for this to implement this defense. But then, it does raise some of my frustrations that this offseason, kind of wish we may have went a little heavier on the transfer portal as far as, defense goes. I mean, I know that we had Nixon transfer late. That may be a guy that they were planning on for the linebacker spot. And for the most part, I mean, Kozlowski, I thought, played good. Jalen Smith played good. There were some linebackers that showed some promise. So I'm not throwing any of those guys out, but at the same time, if we'd have went to the portal maybe and brought in a couple more bodies on that defense, could that have helped out at least getting the, implementing this new defense?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to make any excuses because it sounds kind of like, that's what we would do. I mean, I think that you have valid points. But I also I feel like we've said the word, I wish we would have done better in the transfer portal for like the last 4 years. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's again, like, there's some common threads in North Texas football every year. And it's like, I wish we would get more transfers. Wish we would do more in the portal. Wish we weren't talking about the quarterback. There's like these common things, and none of that's changed right now. So,
I want to save some of the portal talk till after we get done with the game, because there is some things I want to bring up about the portal, and because I know Colorado did what they did Saturday, Texas State's another team that did what they did, but I would like to wait till we get through the game and kind of break down that and how Colorado and Texas State were able to do what they did in such a short period of time. I think there was more factors than just the portal itself. But as far as the game goes, I mean, at one point we were 14-14. I mean, and that was after I felt like had a pretty atrocious start. I mean, 3 and out, they drive down the field, we get the ball back, and then we drive down the field, and then, interception with the wide receiver slips. But even after all that happens, we're still looking at 14-14, and it's a completely different ball game. And then I felt like the tide shifted and it changed pretty quickly.
So you go into halftime, you make adjustments. No, we just come out there and get our asses kicked even more. That was the fact that we came out in the second half and looked worse. That was just, I mean, it's a lot of times we lose games in the first quarter over the past few years when we get kind of slaughtered like that. This was like a shift. Like all of a sudden that second quarter, it goes from 14-14 to 33 or 33-20, 27-14 in a matter of seconds, minutes, whatever. And then all of a sudden it's 33-21. Okay, it's not not that far off. Then, third quarter starts, 41-21, 48-21, but then it just keeps going. And then, again, they almost hung 60 on us. I mean, there's something about getting to 60 that always just like short circuits me a little bit. Like when you're in the 50s, That's kind of common in college football, I guess, these days. 60, you know, um, I don't know, man. It just, yeah, it just like you don't make any adjustments. Do you have a different scheme on defense? Can we not run? Can we start running more up front, bigger up front? Because we're getting gashed. So maybe don't do three. It's not working. So fix it, change it, do something. I would like to know what was. I mean, again, I've been in that locker room a lot of times, different coaches, and I know what happens at halftime when shit's going downhill, and I don't know if we changed anything. So were we just like all just shell shocked? Was it just one big, what the hell are we doing here kind of moment? I would like to know, like, what was going on at halftime, because we were getting killed, and then we came on the second half and we just got beat even more, and kind of just it is what it is. Just,
I mean,
alarming.
I just never felt like there was a good rhythm. I agree with what JD is saying, is that you felt like a sense of relief when we fought back to get it 14-14, and we were throwing the ball, and I thought the receivers made some nice grabs. I mean, I thought there were some decent passes, but at the end of the day, I never felt like there was a rhythm. And then there were a lot of mistakes. I mean, the punts, what was going on with the punter? I mean, just terrible mistakes. So I think you add on the lack of rhythm, and then you also add on these mistakes that, quite frankly, Cal took advantage of every single time. They jumped all over us. They just start to, culminate, and then by the time you get to halftime, like I said, I mean, at the end of the half, what was it, 40? I mean,
it was 30.
You could argue
21 at halftime, but I mean, I think we all can agree, after we got the touchdown, 27-21, Stone's pass to Xavier, them driving down with 1:40 left and scoring that touchdown, make it.
That was huge.
That was huge. I felt like was a kind of a backbreaker in my opinion.
It was.
And then Cal getting the ball back to start the second half. To me, I was like, they've got a 2 touchdown lead going into the second half, and them coming out and extending that right off the bat was, like I said, it was a backbreaker. Yeah. And I wish that, the team, would have put up a little more fight there at the end, getting outscored 25-0 second half didn't help out at all. But
yeah, Jared M in the chat said, I don't think we had a first down in the second half. I can't confirm that, but that sounds pretty darn close, man. I mean,
the second half was a big pile of poop. It was bad, man. There was just nothing to really, we were just watching Groundhog Day. We were just watching the same, it looked, first game of the season, you can let a lot of things out the window, right? But I mean, again, we talked about the debuts, we got beat by SMU, but it was never just like, it felt different than this. And that's the last debut I can go to, right? Is the most recent one is Seth. And I was there, I was on the sideline. I was covering the team at the time. Like, yeah, I didn't think we were going to win the game. I don't think anybody really did. But I walked away feeling better than this. This was hard. This was there was a lot to take in. Nothing was working. You throw a guy in there at the end who just looks lost. So, okay, let's just pump the brakes on the QB controversy. Like, let's just stop, right? Like, let's just stop it. Like, let's just roll out Stone. And if he got the gig, he won the job, whatever, but I don't know, man. This was a weird one, because it didn't seem like there was anything to really be happy about. And I think that's what got Eric in the press conference, why he said some things I don't think he should have said. But again, I appreciate his honesty. But when you're overly honest, it can make you look kind of silly. Or not. He's not looking silly. I'm not saying that. But like, you can just look like you guilty or unprepared or whatever. And if he's unprepared, that's fine. It's his first game as a head coach at North Texas. Not his first game as a head coach. And let's remember that. He's been a head coach before. He's prepped for a game as a head coach plenty of times. So don't tell me don't be unprepared. It felt like we were unprepared. It felt like we were disorganized. It felt like we didn't know what to do sometimes. But again, not tackling the man with the football, I have a real hard time with that. And that was like problem number one.
Yeah.
And that's just a basic fundamental that I'm never gonna like live down.
And to me, I feel like tackling is something that hopefully, I think that's something we can work on and improve throughout. I do want to put out that, last year we were beat 58-27 to UNLV, and I think California is a lot better team than UNLV last year. I know a lot of people have been saying, Cal's a mediocre Power 5, whatever you want to say. I think this is a completely different California team than the California team of last year. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of their year plays out, to see how the season. But to me, I think they're going to have a much better year than they did last year. I will say that. I think this is a game that we could look back at the end of the year and say, it's going to be an ugly loss no matter what. But hopefully if Cal, wins 9-10 games this year in the Pac-12, it's a game we can look back like they were much better than we initially thought. Closing.
I said it on the board. We're 0-1, and guess what? So is UTSA, and I followed that entire UTSA game against U of H, and U of H's got a good team this year. And UTSA hung with them the whole damn game. So, yes, it's disappointing, but there's a lot of teams, basically half of them out there in college football.
Houston's a top 25 team, right?
Yeah, but you're missing my point. What I'm saying is that we're 0-1. You got to put this aside and realize that it's super. We've been beating them up, man, this whole show. What I'm saying is that at this point, we are 0-1, and so let's try to hopefully improve. Hopefully they're going to try to do something against FIU to get the win. But is it disappointing? Absolutely. From where we expected this team to be. But
it's one of those situations where it's hard to stomach when you don't walk out of it with a lot of positives. And I don't think that there was much that they were talking about positive on Sunday morning. I don't think there was anything positive to talk about. Maybe the first couple drives had some moments on offense. Weslowski, 32 was wrapping people up. He was standing out early in the game.
Jalen Smith's another guy that I want to shout out on the defense side of the ball. I think those two guys, we talk about, walk-ons, but I think they're two guys that look like they've got potential to, become pretty solid linebackers for that defense moving forward.
Somebody on the board just or in the chat, we might not win a game all season.
I don't think that, and I said this on Twitter, and I think that it really is. It's never as good as it seems. It's never as bad as it seems. I really think that this game was ugly. There's few bright spots. One bright spot I do want to give a shout out to Jamari Macklin. I think he is the real deal. I think he's one of the best wide receivers that North Texas had, and that's saying because we've got some that's still playing on Sundays. So I think that he showed that he's going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. I think that's a bright spot. But other than that, like I said, I think hopefully looking back, hopefully Cal's a better team, but kind of, like I said, turning the page, putting this loss behind. I think Morris said it, flushing it, and moving forward to Florida International and kind of just putting this game behind us.
Yeah, and put the game aside, where I will agree with Ashton in terms of the frustration is this is an important game from a lot, not just because it's, first home game, but you got an opportunity at the beginning of the season to set the tone for the entire season. Yeah. So it's a statement and it affects attendance. Every person that came to that game, is a potential customer that could be a potential season ticket holder that could donate money to the program. And so when you lay an egg, because we used to beat Seth up on this, he was the worst at opportunity games. I call this was an opportunity game that we missed out on, and they don't come up that often, right? You don't get many opportunities to have a team like Cal at DACU Stadium, and so from that point of an opportunity, that's where I'm really disappointed because that hurts the program.
And I think that's and I'm not trying to be like 100% negative here. And I don't think Morris needs to go. I don't think, no, I'm not saying that. I don't want that to get misconstrued at all. It was just hard to watch at times. And when you're at the game, you're live. It's your home game. Like, just like you said, I mean, I couldn't agree more. It's a statement. You can make a statement. You can lose the game. That's totally fine. Cal is a decent program. But like 2 weeks ago, we were talking about Cal as just kind of being this like left out of the P5 stuff. Maybe it's only Power 4, blah, 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 blah. And, so I don't want anybody to be like, oh, they're Power 5. Well, 2 weeks ago, you kind of crapped on them. So, tap on the brakes there. But, we all picked them to win. A lot of people picked them to win. A lot of people thought we were going to win. We had this kind of quote unquote false confidence going into the game because ignorance is bliss. We didn't know anything about the program or the team. We didn't know what to expect. And I think that we all got a little too high, and it's a big crashing down to earth when it's like, whoa, this looked worse than a lot of times last year. It looked worse. We weren't jiving a lot of times. So I think that's just everything you said. You're live, you're at home, you're in person, you got fans coming to the game. If we lose one of these next 2 games, a lot of those fans that came to game 1 aren't going to come to game 4. If we're 1-2 rolling into that game, which it better be, at least, that's tough, and you are going to lose momentum. And at North Texas, we're always trying to bring fans back out, bring them out. We're trying to get them to come out. And the guy that I sit with at the game, most of the games I go to, I pointed to the wing, and I was like, damn it, I want that wing to be full just one time. I say the same thing every game. You're outside of the U of H game and a little bit of the La Tech game in 2018, it's just empty out there. And, this is the time to do it. You had the right game to do it. And it was a missed opportunity, and that sucks.
And like I said, my hope is that Cal travels to Auburn next week and beats the crap out of them. It would make this loss maybe feel a little better, I guess, is my hope. But I mean, I know there's a lot of people calling to fire Morris and guys on the board fire Mosley. I mean, I think that's fan armchair or way overreacting. I mean, I think it may take a little longer to implement because we did this a new defense, new offense, new staff. I mean, it's a completely changed on both sides of the ball. So I mean, I think it may take maybe a little longer to implement it and get this thing rolling. But like I said, I'm not waving the white flag after one game. Like I said, I wish it would have been closer, wish it would have been better, but I still think we got the right coach. I mean, I think that it's going to.
Yeah.
I mean, FIU is huge, and that's what we'll talk about next. But I think it's definitely a must win. I mean, I feel that way.
I'll be 100% honest. If Morris was a first time head coach, I probably wouldn't have been that annoyed. And I think that's where I kind of got really frustrated because I didn't want him to look unprepared, and I felt that we were unprepared. And if he was a first-time head coach, I would give him all the free passes of, it's a huge moment. You're at home. Maybe opening on the road would have been easier just to kind of get his feet wet. But he's not a first-time head coach, and that was kind of one of the things that I was really struggling with throughout the game. And again, it wasn't we were getting beat. It wasn't the scheme issue on defense. It was just flat out. This wasn't like, there's sometimes previous seasons where guys are just wide open. That wasn't the case. They were literally making us look like we don't know how to tackle. So,
yeah, I mean, the play that sticks out to me is it was 4th and 2, and I think they got like 26 yards, whatever it was. I mean, plays like that. Looking back, I mean, there's a dropped interception. There was definitely some plays that, this game could have been
wasn't the 66-yard run 3rd and long? Wasn't that like a 3rd and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was 2nd down. I don't know. I know it wasn't 4th down, but I felt like the 66-yard run in the 2nd quarter was a really big, just a real deflating moment because anytime you see a guy run like that for 66 yards, you're like, oh, dang.
But again, that play was, as I recall, they put all the onus on those linebackers. I mean, they knew that these linebackers were unproven. And I get that they had good games and they're walk-ons and everything else, but I mean, that didn't have to be a 60-yard touchdown run. They took advantage of our weaknesses, is what I'm saying.
It's not like Kevin Wood didn't play. He played. I don't think
I
he
don't
played
think
all
he's
the first
100.
half.
I don't think he's 100%, man. I don't know that he's where he normally would be. But I would just say this is not as good a team as what we had that almost beat Boise in a bowl game last year. It's just not. Austin Aune is a much. People may not like Austin Aune. He's a lot better at quarterback than what we got right now.
Well, I don't.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with that. JD.
I mean, that team that we lost to Boise, that team that lost to Boise would have performed a lot better, I think. And again, I'm not slamming Eric or anything else. It's just personnel. And we got hit in the portal a little bit too. And we got new quarterbacks. There's, I think we're all guilty a little bit of hopes, having high hopes, maybe unrealistic.
And my one thing to go to that is, I mean, when you think about that Boise State game, yeah, we didn't have a head coach, but I mean, that was year 2 in that defensive system. That was year 3 in the offensive system. So, I mean, I think it's going to take, Rod in the chat did point out, Morris lost his first 2 games at UIW. So, 30-62 to New Mexico, 16-58 to North Texas. I do think the young defense, I think the offense is going to start clicking. I definitely think the team's going to improve. I think, and hopefully it starts Saturday night in Miami.
Absolutely. Huge game.
So, flushing this one, moving on to Miami. We started out as 17-point favorites. Miami's 1-1 going in. They lost the first game to Louisiana Tech. Our next opponent, they lost at 17-22. They beat Maine 14-12 Saturday. So, I think the line's already moved down to like 13.5, but still 2 touchdown favorites. To me, it's as winnable a game and as must win as we could hope for in game 2. I think the only bad spot is it's an away game, but maybe that's what this team needs to kind of get things on track.
Yeah, if you look at the schedule, you really need this game. So there's a little bit of pressure. It is a road game, which is always a challenge. When you're struggling, it doesn't usually get easier on the road. But hopefully in this case, we can come out and really take control early and minimize some of the mistakes. Because there were a lot of mistakes in that Cal game, a lot of mistakes, penalties and other things like that. This is the week. I think Morris understands some of his press conference and just things that he said. The quarterbacks, the North Texas quarterbacks weren't ready for the lights that they were in. He said something to the effect of they weren't quite ready for the lights, that night. And I think what he was alluding to was that you got to dumb this thing down, man. You got to simplify this and make it real, kind of make it real easy for them to understand what to do and how to play. Same thing on defense. Let's step it back and understanding that this team really struggled out of the gate, and let's try to make it as they don't have to think near as much about where to be. Let's just get them to where they can react and make plays.
Yep. And so transition to FIU. Their first game against La Tech, 17-22. They had 4 yards passing. So I would say that, quarterback play is probably not going to be their strong suit, but they did have 206 yards on the ground. So I think this is going to be a good test to see how Capone and that defense, how improved they are tackling. Can they stop the run? That's going to be the key part of this defense is, and like y'all said, we had guys in position. There was plays that we had dead in the water and couldn't tackle. So that's going to be I would say that would be my key to victory against the FIU game is stopping the run game.
Well, and our run game needs to come back too. Our run game disappeared the other night. So, I would say that we've got to, with that offensive line and that stable of running backs, we've got to get the running game off the ground here in this game. That's the whole key of the game is can we run the ball on them?
Yeah. And I don't know if that's I think the running game will improve. I think with that offensive line and the running backs, I think it's got to improve. I don't know if that was a product of one not being able to get stuff going, because even Moore said there was just no momentum, and it didn't feel like that way. It felt like we were behind the chains from first kickoff. But also, when you fall behind 3 touchdowns, it's really hard to sit there and work on establishing the run. I feel like at that point
you're playing from behind.
Yeah, and I felt like that was it. So hopefully, get to Miami, can establish that running game early. I know last time we played them, the running, I don't have the stats pulled up in front of me, but it was a pretty impressive. I think we scored 50-something points that game. So hopefully can get the running backs established early and get that turned around. I think it's going to be a big emphasis on our success moving forward is getting that rushing attack going. And it takes pressure off the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest elixirs in football is in college football, especially, is a running game. Get the running game going. That solves a lot of problems. Time of possession, we got killed in that on Saturday. Let's flip that around. There's a lot of times where I love tempo. I love tempo, but when you go tempo, and your defense just came off the field, you better get at least one first down. And we didn't do that a few times. And I feel like the defense probably did in the first half, probably got a little tired because there were a couple real short possessions. And so let's nullify that and change that up. But yeah, I mean, FIU's a very, very, very winnable game. And I think that the defense should come out just guns blazing and pissed off because, hearing jackasses like us say that they weren't tackling very well, and so, yeah, I hope that and they know it. I mean, they're watching the film. I mean, they watched that one play where, there were 13 different times the guy was hit, or whatever it was. I had somebody send it to me on Twitter. I said to somebody, it's hard to watch. I really hope they're playing that play over and over again in the meetings because it's just exactly what not to do. And so just wrap up, just do that. And against FIU, most likely, they're not going to be bouncing off you as easily just because they don't have the horses. So yeah, it would be nice. I hope that FIU is not looking at this like, okay, we can wax UNT when they come in here because they just got drubbed by a cow, so.
And I do need to point out they did change quarterbacks. They went the first game was Grayson James. They switched to Keon Jenkins this last game, and he had 292 yards passing. True freshman quarterback from Miami.
Yeah, and their wide receiver Chris Mitchell was the conference player of the week for Conference USA with 201 receiving yards in that 14-12 victory. So, that's a guy we're going to have to. And I thought our secondary actually played pretty well, to be quite honest. So I think that's a guy, this Chris Mitchell, we're going to have to keep an eye out for at the receiver position because he had a monster game in terms of yards.
Yeah, it's hard to really get a gauge on our DBs. I don't think they played bad. We weren't getting smoked, we weren't just – the guys weren't running free, wide open. But when you make a backup quarterback or the number 2 look like that perfect, I'll take that guy. He was just everywhere. I mean, he had a cannon. Finley, right? I think his name's Finley.
Yeah, Ben Finley.
He looked great. He looked poised. He looked, there was one play where he scrambled across his body and then directed the guy to come in on third down and just threw a strike to a guy just found a soft part of the zone. And I was like, damn, that's the kind of play that I want to happen on our end because that just looked smooth and it just looked like a nice, well-oiled machine from the backup quarterback. And so, we got to get some of that going because those are confidence boosters when you got, third down. Yeah.
The Finley look was awesome. But again, that's the theme of what we're talking about here is the damn portal. And where did they didn't even recruit him. He's a portal transfer from North Carolina State. And, and the guy before him was a transfer from TCU that got injured. He went out early and you would have thought, wow, that's a good thing for North Texas. But then Finley comes in and he's just as good or better than this guy. But again, that's a theme we're going to keep hearing over and over again in these games is, here's a guy that tore us up that was a portal transfer quarterback.
Because they're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Right.
It's every
that's
game.
Right.
You watched the Oregon State game last night and yesterday and they couldn't stop talking about DJ, Yuga, whatever, from the Clemson guy. So it's just, and they talked about the whole time, like portal. And yeah. And so it is going to become a broken record when some fans and regardless, that's also kind of exciting. It's like free agent signings. You get in the major sports when you sign a big free agent, you're like, oh yeah, we got so and so, we landed him, great, we convinced him to come play here. That's the same thing as a transfer portal. You got a guy that's really good. It's all it is free agency. And look what Dion just did. Like 86 new guys or something like this, something crazy. Like
That's
in
right.
that game, like that's nuts. So, I mean, we need to, hit the portal hard, and that's a way for a school like us to succeed. Get these guys, that don't want to, that can't make it somewhere else or behind somebody or just whatever. So yeah, we're going to hear it a lot.
So transition to that, like I was talking about earlier, Colorado, big win over TCU, pretty much a whole new
Huge.
team.
Whole new
The thing
team.
about Dion is, I mean, he had a ton of NIL money. He brought a ton of guys from Jackson State with him, not to mention All-American quarterback who's his son. I mean, I think that's a huge addition. He had an ace in his pocket, I feel like, there. But the one that I feel like is going to be, we're going to hear a lot about, we're going to be compared, is G.J. Kinney at Texas State. They beat Baylor. I don't know how good Baylor is compared to Cal. That's going to be interesting moving forward to see how those teams compare. But GJ's a guy that brought in 50-something guys. A thing I want to put out is, he was at UIW last year. He brought over his whole staff, but he brought over 9 guys from UIW. And that UIW team last year was solid. I think North Texas was good last year, but I think UIW would have gave him a run for their money, if not beat him. I mean, that team was legit. But out of the 9 guys they brought over from UIW, 8 of them were recruited by Morris to UIW. So I feel like we got to give Morris some credit that the guy can recruit. I mean, those are all guys he brought out of high school, got them to an FCS school, and now they're starting Division I football. And most of those guys played. I mean, looking at the 8 guys that Morris recruited that playing for Texas State, watching that game the other night,
they're playing.
Over half of them played and were making plays.
Yep.
So that gives me a little. But I think one thing that GJ had that Jared didn't, or that Morris didn't, is Texas State was god awful last year. He had the ability to come in and bring in 52 guys. I think North Texas has some solid guys in their roster. I don't think it's a complete rebuild. I think we need to plug some holes. But as far as I don't think the answer coming to North Texas was, kicking off half the team and bringing.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And Morris had to come in, and his job was a different job. It was to try to sell all these guys to stay. We were talking last week. We got 4 running backs that could easily. Why do we have 4 great running backs like this? Why didn't some of them go to the? So you have to say that was kind of the task of Eric, and we would have done the same thing coming into this program that went to a bowl game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And said, we've got to convince these guys to stay more, that we need to completely replace it, right? They had to do at Texas State. So it was a little bit different. I can see why Eric would have done that more than replace the whole team.
Yeah. But then talking about the transfer portal, I mean, looking at this North Texas team, I know we act like that they don't use the portal, but then when you break down, probably the 10 best players on the North Texas team, I mean, Jamari Macklin, Missouri transfer, Mason Richards transfer, John Davis, Rich Tejada. I mean, those are probably 2 of the best the cornerback duo North Texas has had in a long time. I think both those guys are super solid. Both of them are transfers, Texas Tech and McNeese. So, I think we've got a pretty good number of guys that are transferred. I think that moving forward, I think Capone being a young guy, Morris being young, I don't think they're going to be satisfied with getting their teeth kicked in by the Cows of the world. So I think that we probably will see the portal utilized more moving forward. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think GJ did a great job, but I think when you're going and taking over a team that had 1 win last year, it's a lot easier to go in there and completely, because he wasn't really having to spend a lot of time recruiting Texas State guys back. He just went there day one and, brought in as many guys as he can or could.
Yeah, and I think the flip side of that is that's also what kind of bothered me about Saturday, is that it wasn't a dead roster.
Yeah.
He inherited a roster with guys. This is a bowl roster last year. I mean, regardless of winning a bowl game, we went to a bowl game. We won football games last year. So I was, I'm comparing a lot of it to Seth's first game. but Seth, hung with SMU closer, probably with way less of a talented roster, and a quarterback he benched in the third quarter. So I don't think that Eric needed to come in here, and overhaul the whole thing at all. But that's also why I expected more out of that game, because these weren't just dudes that were like, I'm fresh out from D2. What do I do? Tackle the guy with the ball. Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. And so, Cleveland didn't do anything. Okay, I'm saying, Conrad. Yeah, I mean, it's, they didn't really have a chance to. I mean, he doesn't need to overhaul the roster. There's definitely some guys here, we think. But I think that, college football nowadays, especially on our level, is all about the portal. You've got to get dudes in the portal. Recruit some diamonds in the rough. Get some 2 stars and 3 stars that should be 4 or 5s. Get the Jeffrey Wilsons and the Mason Fines of the world that will come here because, nobody else is giving them the credit they deserve or whatever. Find them, groom them, develop them. But while you're developing the guys that you think have some talent, go out and get the free agents. And get some of the guys that, like, I would question why Morris didn't get the guys from Incarnate Word that he recruited. Did he try to go get him to come here instead of Texas State?
And I think, that point's been brought up quite a bit. But, I think that when Morris leaves to go to Washington State and those guys are stuck there in Incarnate Word, he took the quarterback, he took their best wide receiver and took them with him to Washington State. As far as the defensive guys, he's an offensive coordinator at Washington State. So I doubt he had much pull of like, hey, I'm going to bring the safeties with me or anything like that. But then I got to look at it from, I didn't play college football, but I played travel baseball and stuff. And I feel like if your coach leaves, new guy comes in, he takes you to the national championship FCS, and then that whole staff, the whole Incarnate Word staff moves to Texas State. The safeties coach, those safeties are going with their position coach at Texas State.
Yeah.
I think that's, and I've said it before, Morris took a huge pay bump to go to Washington State, and it worked out. He got a Division I head coaching job. But I think, if he stays at Incarnate Word, I think all those guys probably are at North Texas this year. But, I think when he leaves to Washington State, Kenny comes in, builds the relationships, and they had the success they did. I see why they all jumped and went to Texas State. I don't know which guys we went after or anything like that, but like I said, it makes a lot of sense. Those guys, following their current head coach and current staff, position coaches, to the new job in San Marcos.
But you hit the nail on the head, JD, when we were talking after the game, and you're like, Texas State beating Baylor just made our loss against Cal like it was like pouring, gasoline into the wound. It just made it even a terrible situation even worse.
Yeah.
So that's the downside. I'm happy for the Texas State story. It's great what he's done, and it proves the portals can change things. But it also is kind of a slap in the face, if you're a North Texas fan. And then one other thing that we haven't mentioned enough, I think, tonight is Capone. Capone is making a lot of money.
I think we've mentioned it.
Well, I know, but I'm saying specifically him. He's got some. We're hitting on Eric a lot here, and he's the head coach. But is Capone going to be another Bodie Reeder, or is Capone going to be,
Bowen,
a Skladany, or someone like that? That's a big question mark on this program right now.
And I know I've talked about it, and I know it's Go Mean Green, and they're tired of hearing about it. I do. If you look at probably one of the school that's done the most and least, you look at Iowa State, that defense, if we can get that here, I think that it's going to take time to get the guys implemented. I know that safety's kind of struggled. I think we got some good guys back there, but it's going to take time. I know a lot of people don't like the 3-man front. All I can go back to is his Mount Union background. There's been a ton of super smart defensive guys that's came out of that group. And then the time he spent at Iowa State, you just hope that eventually when we get this thing on track and get it figured out, it's going to be a lot better. I know we've had some defense coordinators come in that ran the 3-man front, but we've never had a guy that's ran the Iowa State version of it. And 24 that's on our recruiting show, he's really tied into the football community. I mean, that's high school coaches. They're trying to get those Iowa State guys in to learn the defense. When it's ran and we have the guys to run it, it's probably one of the best defenses, in the country. But like I said, I think it's going to take some time to get it implemented, and then, get the right guys in here to run it. That's I guess the hope I have on that side of the ball.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, they've had 8 months, like they've had a little bit of time to scheme for this game. It's just stuff, nothing's, Cal didn't just pop up on the schedule 2 weeks ago. I mean, I'm not as optimistic on the defensive side. I know there's the Iowa State background, but it's not like he was the DC. I understand everything you're saying, and I'll agree with you. There's a lot of potential there, but when you're watching a defense that is making that many bad misplays, then it's concerning. Like you can't make them tackle the guy with the football. Like you can't. You can put them in the right position, and they seem like they were, but why are they not tackling? It's we're talking about it wasn't just like 3 or 4 missed tackles. That's the thing, is it's like that was so. How does that happen on the first game? And if it happens against FIU and there's a weird, it's a tie game and we miss a tackle or something like that and they score. And if there's a missed tackle that's a big play against FIU that comes out and decides the game or ties the game or does anything big, like a noticeably bad missed tackle, then we're gonna start getting a theme here. And then there's more pitchforks. And that's not good for him, at all.
I mean, and then I'll just play devil's advocate here, but Cal's running back, former 4-star guy, probably going to be at USC next year, the way the transfer portal works and stuff. I mean, that may be the best running back we face all year. That may be the best offensive line we face all year.
He was good. He was very good.
But he wasn't good last year, right? He was pretty disappointing last year from everything I read, right? He didn't have Ott wasn't really fulfilling a lot of people's hopes last year. From everything I read going into this game,
he looked like the real deal Saturday.
No, I'm not disputing he was good on Saturday. What I read about him going into the game was that last year was kind of a disappointment for him, and he wasn't really doing what I don't know his stats. I didn't go back and look at his stats, but I don't know. Maybe they gave him some hope because he was good. I don't know. Maybe I was reading it. I mean, it was kind of a disappointing year for him anyway. But I wasn't afraid of him going into the game, but by the second half, I was like, we need to stop number one. Number one's doing some things.
Yes, he
maybe
was.
tackle him.
Moving to wrap it up, we're getting pretty close to the hour mark. What happens? What needs to happen Saturday? What's an outcome that would make both of y'all kind of change y'all's mind about how the season's going? And I guess what's the opposite of the outcome that makes y'all completely throw in the towel? Start with you, Ashton.
All right, I get to go first. I can take all Harry's ideas.
Yes.
All right, so if the defense lays a complete egg, then what motivation do we have to be confident about them the rest of the season? Then it's going to be every game. You're going to go back to 2019. You're going to go back to 2020, and you're just going to be like, we can't stop anybody. Okay, good. So Odd was good last year. I think what I read is that they were disappointing last year, and I think I need to go back and read that. But yeah, one of the writers said that. So good. Thanks.
Ashton's out. He quit.
He's out for the count.
That's my AirPod. What can I do? What I think needs to happen to give us hope is I think we need to have a really strong game, a really good quarterback showing tomorrow. A good quarterback showing, or not tomorrow, this week would ease a lot of worries. If Stone comes out there and has a great game and just is solid, then that's I think that's going to give people some hope okay, good. We've got a quarterback. He can play. If he's got 2 or 3 really good, kind of Mason fine improvisational plays. I mean, not to hold the Mason standards, but just to say that, then I think that would give us some hope. But yeah, on the defensive side, if we have a bad defense and we miss tackles all game, we're gonna be hearing about the rest of the season.
My keys for the game, I would say on defense, we've got to get Mason Richards on track. I mean, he just didn't do any. I mean, I know he had a couple tackles or whatever, but he wasn't the star player that he was for us last year. They absolutely kept him out of the game, and a credit to Cal for really taking our defensive MVP pretty much out of the mix. On offense, I'm going to say we have got to run the ball against FIU. If we cannot run the ball against FIU, then this thing is going to come off the tracks in a bad way. So now if you get some runs, get some things going, let's open up the receivers. I mean, I'm all about that. Like you said, Macklin looks like a star, but we've got to increase those running back numbers significantly against a program like FIU, or there's going to be big trouble.
Yeah, I'm right there with both of you guys. I think establish the run game. I think if we get that thing rolling, I think it's going to help the quarterback play. But my main thing is make the tackles. Like we said, I mean, I think we were in good position most of the day Saturday. Just finish tackles and get some confidence back. I hope that the team is fired up, motivated, and not comes out guns a-blazing, not really head down, still sulking about the loss. I guess that would be my thing. I want to hopefully come get the ball first of the game, get a drive to kind of establish some kind of rhythm, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So we're, like I said, started 17-point favorites. Ashton, what's your predictions for next Saturday?
Damn it. Why do I have to go first? You know what?
I'll delete that part of the last video because I think we all missed the scoring predictions by quite a bit. So we'll scratch that. We'll start the standings this week.
That's right.
No, I'll be honest with you. I have not even thought about a score for this week game. I have no idea what to expect again. I mean, I think we come out better. I don't think FIU's that great. I'm going to say, 30-21.
Harry?
Man, they're low scoring. They only scored 14 points against Maine. I'm going to go with a little lower scoring game. I'm going to say North Texas is going to win 24-10.
Okay. I'm going to completely put on my green shaded glasses, drink the Kool-Aid. I'm saying 41-14. I think this is coming out party. We're going to be able to start rebuilding Go Mean Green since it was burnt down this week. But
that's right.
Hopefully change some people's opinions and get the season on track. And
yeah, I hope you're right. That would be
awesome.
Let's
go.
Build some confidence for not only the fan base, the team, and
we need it.
So that's what I'm going with. Hopefully I'm right. But you guys got anything else?
Were we all just a little bit too? I mean, when we got off the pod last week and then leading into the game, was everybody still with their predictions? Was everybody still thinking that we were going to win that game? I mean, I think I started wondering, we all picked them to win? Damn. And I saw that Vito said we weren't going to win because that's just what he always says. I was walking into that game like, man, are we going to win? All four of us said we're going to win. Are we just a big Kool-Aid drinking podcast or what? I don't know.
I mean, I was confident, and I mean, I remember sitting there watching the first drive when they did the flip and deferred to the second half. I'm like, I hate that. I hate not having the ball start the second half. I think it's such.
I wanted the ball. I wanted the ball to start the game.
Did you? I was kind of opposite. I was like, let's save that for the second half. Hopefully we can get rolling. But then when we went 3 and out, they ran down the field. I was like, oh my gosh. I was sitting over there with a couple ex-football players, and they were like, oh, here we go again. And then when we were able to score, and then it seemed like, okay, we're back in this 14-14, and then like I said, it all went downhill. So, but yeah, I was drinking the Kool-Aid up until, I mean, I think College Game Day, 2 of the guys picked us for like Super Dogs of the Week.
That was it. That was crazy.
80-something% of the money was on North Texas this week in Vegas. I mean, I think a lot of people were drinking the Kool-Aid, and I think, like I said, my hope was first game jitters for 1, and 2, we look back at this game, week 10, week 12, and Cal's is putting together a pretty good season. I hope they're not, 2-8 or, 3-7 at that point. I really hope that they're, making noise in the Pac-12. I think that will help us be able to maybe forget this game towards the end of the season, hopefully.
Real quick before we get off, I want to hit on a couple things. First off, big shout out to Last Stand Hats. I actually been checking out their website. They've got some cool designs, especially there's a gray one that has a UNT Texas thing that's caught my eye, and I'm fixing to have to buy me one of those. But they're our generous sponsors to the show, so we want to definitely get people. Just laststandhats.com. Go check it out. Also, go ahead. Yeah.
No, Last Stand
North Texas. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Flash, Go Mean Green. Click on, I think, Oscar 10 for 10% off. That goes towards Oscar Attaway. He's the, ambassador for Last Stand Hats for North Texas. But, yeah, that was something that I did want to give a shout out. I've seen a lot of Last Stand Hats Saturday. That was something nice to see. I think they're putting out a lot of good North Texas stuff right now, so be sure and go and support them.
And they have a whole North Texas section too, which I love that, because a lot of times North Texas is kind of near the rear of the side or whatever, but like it's pretty good selection, and it's unique to North Texas, which is kind of cool.
Duke's basically about to beat Clemson.
Hey, and shout out North Texas volleyball. They beat Texas Tech tonight. So
yes, and also a shout out to the UNT basketball. Especially, it was so cool to have them at the tailgate Saturday. JD was like hobnobbing with Ross Hodge the whole time. It was.
He spent some time at Paris Junior College. Me being an East Texas guy, I mean, he kind of knew the vicinity of Gaines, Texas was, so that was kind of neat knowing that. But yeah, that's him and Coach Hurl, and the guys came over there, and then they got their NIT rings at halftime or second quarter.
Yeah.
So that was.
And Ashton I was shocked, man. Ashton showed up to the tailgate, which that's always like a big.
I do what I can. I like to drop by and see some people and talk to people that I don't get to hang out with the fans too often. I want to get. I'm just kidding. No, that's all I am now. So bring back Beyond the Green. What?
That's right.
But
you should.
Hopefully next time we get together, we're talking about a victory and maybe a little more positive vibes for next week's show. Hopefully that's the fingers crossed for that, and hopefully Evan gets his we get the technical difficulties, because I don't want to have to help moderate this or whatever you want to call it. I like to go back.
We miss you, Evan.
Yes.
We miss you, man. Come back.
Very miss. So
thank you.
With that, hopefully, like I said, Saturday victory. Next time we're all together talking about a victory. So with that, Go Mean Green.
Go Mean Green.